Hello, and welcome to today's discussion where we'll be learning about Volunteering Queensland and the work that they are doing for volunteering and the community. First off, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the lands that we are meeting on, the Yagara and Turrbal people of Meanjin, Brisbane. Today, we are interviewing Simone Hasker, the Senior Marketing Communications Manager for Volunteering Queensland. How are you today, Simone?
I'm really well, Brianna. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited to talk about Volunteering Queensland and all the amazing work that they do because they deserve all the publicity that they can get. So,
Oh, thank you.
yeah, can we start with who is Volunteering Queensland?
Absolutely. Volunteering Queensland is the state's peak body for volunteers and anybody that uses volunteers throughout the state. So peak body just basically means that we represent organisations in the community that utilise volunteers. So whether that's a not-for-profit, it could be a charity, it could be a sporting club, it could be a corporate group that has volunteers that work in the staff, it could be all sorts, anyone that uses volunteers. So we span across all sectors of the community. Every single industry has volunteers somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yes.
what does Volunteering Queensland do?
So our job is across a few different areas. So first and foremost, our job is to represent those organisations and help them do their job better. So a small organisation usually runs on volunteers themselves. They're very, very lacking in resources, let's just say, so financially and human resources. So they need all the support they can get. So our job is to give them the tools that they need to recruit volunteers, to retain volunteers, help them on board volunteers. What is best practice when you're engaging a volunteer? You know, things like a lot of things that you might not think about, such as including volunteers as if they're part of the workforce. You know, a lot of times we hear that volunteers are sort of shoved over in the corner and yeah, whatever, when actually they need to be valued and they need to feel like they're making a difference and contributing as well. So it's so important that volunteers are recruited and onboarded so that they stay, so that they keep wanting to come back and feel like they're having an input. So a lot of what we do is providing those resources to the volunteer involving organisations throughout Queensland. It could be templates, it could be brochures, it could be online software tools that they can use to make their jobs easier. So that's our big number one thing that we do here. And probably second to that, or alongside that, I should rather say, is to use those relationships that we have with volunteering organisations to obtain their feedback. They're the ones on the ground. They're the ones, you know, meeting with people across all sectors, as I mentioned. So it's their input that we receive back that we can then feed upward to help influence government policy and that kind of thing. So we're advocates for volunteers upwards to government and to councils and that sort of thing as well. And then as a third thing, we do some additional little projects. So we might, you might have heard of the Brisbane Mud Army. So when there's floods in Brisbane, we help the Brisbane City Council recruit the volunteers to get out on the streets and do the work. So we have a large database of volunteers that we match with roles all year round, but we also have separate databases for separate councils when they need volunteer help, you know, quick smart. So we've got our finger in a lot of different pies and it keeps us very busy and we love it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's so glad to see the Peak State Body actually give a voice to volunteers themselves while also providing support for organizations that are within volunteering. So it's so wonderful to see. Next question. What initiatives do Volunteering Queensland have? I know that you mentioned the Mud Army, but I know that they have many, many other initiatives. Could you tell us a couple of them?
That's right. So wow, there are a few. So we get given projects a lot of the time from government and private institutions as well. Some of the other ones that we've worked on recently and still going actually is the Care Army. So the Care Army is another body of volunteers that was formed during COVID-19. The initial impetus for Care Army was to get people back into aged care facilities because, as you know, during COVID, that was, you know, a no-go zone. So to help speed up the reintroduction of volunteering into the aged care, we were charged with leading the way and getting volunteers into that space. But that's now morphed into just doing good work in the community. So we have a lot of organisations that say we really need help with this thing that's coming up, and we could reach out to the Care Army group of volunteers that we have. What else have we done? We've done some work in neighbourhood centres. So around Queensland, there are small little neighbourhood centres that help organisations get volunteers on the ground, and they're often just one or two people stuck in an office. So we coordinate all of that as well. So there's a lot going on. And as you would know, one of our big projects at the moment is to start working with underrepresented groups in the volunteering space, and working out how we can get those underrepresented groups more involved in volunteering.
That's wonderful. I know that you mentioned this before with the support, the brochures, the flyers, but is Volunteering Queensland an RTO?
As well, we are an RTO. Yes, we are. So one of the things that we do, and I believe we might be the only volunteering body in Australia to do this, is to actually train people in how to become a manager of volunteers. So we offer a certificate 1, 2, and 3 online now. It used to be in person, but it's online. So that's often delivered through schools. A lot of school students. I think we've got about 50 schools way up from the top of Queensland, out west, and everywhere that, you know, school students can do this as a course to get the skills that they need to run community groups and to help manage people in that area. So they can use those skills at music festivals or wherever volunteers are needed. At the same time, as part of our RTO, we do non-accredited training as well. So without the piece of paper at the end, and that's just upskilling people who might already be doing that job. It could be professional development, and we have a professional development program for volunteer managers. So yes, we're teaching as well, so that we keep fostering more and more volunteers onto the scene, which is really our sole purpose. It's advancing and promoting volunteering.
Yeah, I was shocked to find out that it was also a training organization, and it's
Oh,
wonderful
right.
that
Yes.
you guys have certificates and non-accredited courses.
Mm-hmm.
But with the certificates, is there any prerequisites or certifications needed before applying? And can like people out of school do the certificate as well?
Yes, I believe so. I would have to check that on for you actually, but given that the course is online, I don't see why not. But primarily, we do deal with school age children doing their active volunteering is the course certificate 1, 2, and 3, and non-accredited. Some of those are up to 12 years. So, but no, it is open to anybody, to answer your question.
Wonderful. Now I did have a website, and I know that we're currently working with Volunteering Queensland with this project that you guys are doing. It's the Volunteer Management Activity Project. Could you give us a little bit more insight as to what that is?
Certainly. So, the volunteering management is, or VMA, we call it for short. It's a federally funded program.
Yeah.
It was devised, I believe, last year to sort of really push volunteer management for VIOs. So it was formed by the Department of Social Services, and it runs for 5 years up until 2026. And the whole premise behind it is to do what we're already doing, and that is that to accept that volunteering is valued and inclusive and diverse. So it has a real focus on partnering with all the peak bodies. So we're the Queensland peak body for volunteering, but there's one in every state. And so our purpose under this volunteering management is to make sure that all groups are represented in the volunteering space and they have equal access to it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, it's awesome to see that people that are like the minorities for
Yes.
volunteering, that they're actually getting a voice and actually being heard, and how can we improve on that? It's so amazing to be a part of that. But with the vision for Volunteering Queensland, for increased engagement within the diversity sector, as we mentioned,
Mm.
what does that look like for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Queenslanders?
Good question. So, unfortunately, up till now, we don't have a lot of data in this space. So, the best data that we have about different minority groups and how they participate in volunteering, it's so complicated because probably the most most difficult thing is that people's interpretation of what a volunteer is varies from culture, from groups, all kinds of things. So a lot of people picture a volunteer as, maybe an older lady helping at St. Vincent de Paul in the shop selling old clothes or something. But actually, volunteering can span right down to coaching your son's cricket team on a Saturday morning, right across the board. So the first thing we need to really get people to understand is what a volunteer is, and that can be anything. It can be, dropping off shopping to your neighbours, anything. We call that informal volunteering as opposed to
Right.
formal volunteering, which is with an organisation.
Mm.
So the vision for increasing engagement within the diversity sector, particularly in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander group, is to empower them, to reduce any barriers that they may have to participating in volunteering, and to find out what the opportunities are for them. So as I was mentioning earlier, the census data is really all we have, and it's too much of a blunt tool. It doesn't allow for any grey areas. So, I mean, the results of the last census, for example, showed Aboriginal regional shires in Queensland, the results were so varied, which makes us, one was an extremely high rate of volunteering, which bucks all trends for all groups. And then right next door at the next shire was a really low rate of volunteering, which makes us question whether the question was understood, whether their interpretation of what that means is the same as what we mean. So we really need to find out what's going on and then reduce those barriers and increase engagement.
Exactly. As I mentioned earlier, we are helping you guys with volunteer management activity project. But hearing people talk about volunteering in their own space, it's a lot of them are informal volunteering. I don't think they realize that they are volunteering every day. They don't
That's right.
realize. So I think it would be good to finally have that data come together so we can have a full understanding, because I don't think they realize that they are volunteers.
And actually, it's not just in this sector, it's across the board. If you ask
Exactly.
anybody on the street, when was the last time you volunteered, they'll probably sort of have to stop and think. But actually, we do it all the time. We do it all the time. We're constantly doing good things for other people and maybe not considering that volunteering. But anything that you're giving of your service without expecting anything in return, particularly money, is volunteering. So we're all for encouraging a lot more of it, because that's what keeps our communities running. I mean, if you just think about if all volunteers stop work tomorrow, that's 3 million people just stop doing what they're doing. The Queensland would grind to a halt.
Yeah, exactly. They're such a very important part of society, so got to keep that going. But I know this is a very out there question, but I do want to ask, for Volunteering Queensland, what does the future of volunteering look like for them?
For our group, for us in particular, there's always so much work to do. We're a non-profit ourselves, so we're limited in how much access we have to resources and things as well. But we've got so many great ideas. A lot of the time, as I said, it's about educating people on what a volunteer is. It's about increasing engagement so that more and more people go, I can do that. That's not hard. I'm going to do that. So we've got some vision going forward, and they're mostly around targeting the underrepresented groups, hence the volunteer management work. And then there's some work around engagement with youth, because we know that youth are also an underrepresented group, and somebody's got to fill the spots of the older demographic that's currently doing the majority of volunteering. We want to incorporate more technology with some apps and different ways to tap into and recognise the work that's already going on. It's such a hard thing for us to measure, and so we really need to come up with some good ideas for how to track what people are doing already, and then, say thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Is there any other information that you'd like to share before we finish today?
Look, I guess depending on who your audience is, but there are so many ways to volunteer, as we've mentioned, not just stuff you do around your neighbourhood, but I'd really like to see a lot of more corporate groups get involved in volunteering, and they are. Corporate social responsibility is a big area. I'd love to see more corporates getting in touch with Volunteering Queensland and finding out how. I'd love to send my staff to help do something one day. What can we do? And start the conversation. That would be great. I'd love to see more students come come and approach us, or universities and youth groups, and say, we're already doing it, how can we help? It's just about using the service. We're here to facilitate those discussions, so we welcome those conversations.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, last question. If when you mentioned contacting you guys, do you guys have centers across the state, or is it just one? Like, how do we get to you guys?
Yes, so our only office now is in Brisbane, but we do have representatives and we travel quite a bit regionally as well.
Okay.
So, but the best way is through the Queensland website, Volunteering Queensland, which is volunteeringqld.org.au, and all our details are on there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today,
No,
Simone,
it's lovely talking to you.
yeah, to explain to our viewers today who Volunteering Queensland is and all the amazing initiatives and training and everything that you all do for the volunteering industry. If viewers today would like more information on Volunteering Queensland or would like to contact them, the details will be in the description below, as Simone said a little bit before. And I'd like to finish where we started by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are all on and paying our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. I also extend our respect to all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today watching this video. Once again, I'd like to say thank you to Simone for joining us on our Deadly Yarn today, and to everyone watching, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow the TMC YouTube channel for more content. Have a safe and deadly day.